all systems go. Clear for liftoff. What's up, everyone? Tyler Tamboline here, aka ToeTagginTambo, back for another edition of the Takedown Breakdown here on the Ship It Nation YouTube station with my guy Nades. As usual, we will have another member from Ship It Nation and DFS Mastermind Project, Kyle at Go Collect. Those who know him in the Discord, he'll be joining us at the halfway point, breaking down his single entry and some thoughts on the Week 5 slate. But Nades and I will go through it as usual. We'll talk through the perfect lineup. We'll look at the $20 Millie Maker winner. We'll talk about a heavily owned chalk week that got there and go through some of the thought process around that. But Nades, what's going on, man? Another week in the books, but we still got Monday night if you haven't got there yet. I'll be counting on Monday night with Kansas City at Jacksonville.
Yeah, hashtag never Mahomes until you do, right? Until Showdown Slate, the famous Tambo liners there. So looking forward to that show. You always have good angles in on games like this with the Chiefs, right? Where it's so spread out, things like that. Overall, I had probably my best Sunday of the season so far. Cashed in on a 555 ticket finally. It's about time I cashed in on a dang satellite entry, but yeah, it was a pretty chalk week. I didn't quite fully get there because I just never build completely chalk lineups and just have one spot really or two spots. I like to have three or four, right? Which we can talk about that as well when we break it down. I just like when I'm up against the field, right, that has 150 or anybody, right? When you're up against the field that other people have 150 in this and the fields are still large. Even, I mean, you got to still beat 5,500 people, right? In a 555, you have to. I just like more avenues for leverage in that. So we'll do our best to talk through that. But overall, pretty solid Sunday. I know the nation crushed again. Shoved the sweet boy, winning 110,000. Many ultimate. Kenny got on the winners for a nice 4x for 100 grand in his pocket. Many other members crushed as well. And we're gonna talk about the tools on why so many members crush week in and week out. We just looked at the stack rankings again. If you stick to the top 10, you pretty much can build all teams that are right there to put you in position as long as you follow everything else, right, that you talk about and we talk about over at Ship It Nation, in the Discord, at DFS Mastermind, on the shows, right, in terms of roster construction, building good teams. You would have had a pretty good Sunday in general.
Yeah, I can't talk about it enough. We go through this stuff week after week, but like, man, what a week for the nation as a whole. Like, again, a back-to-back 100K weeks now. Last week, we had our guy Jay Walken. This week, sweet boy Eden Cohen. He's up there. Our other guy, Kevin, up there right behind him for 10K. We had Kenny go for 96K. Doesn't matter your buy-ins, though. Look, like Taco Todd shipped both afternoon slates on both sites, 300 and 150. But for his bankroll, that's a huge ROI, return on investment. So you got that. We had MMA. We had 20K, 8K, 600 plus. We had all kinds of scores in MMA. We had Ham Hock and the crew just crush it over in college football. And so a 40K there, a first timer for 150, 5,000, 8,200 off of like $188. Just a ton of different stuff. Said, went to your slate plan, picked what they said, filled in 2 more spots with your projections. Bam. And so can't tell you guys enough. If you want to get in and check it out, you can use Ship 19, 5 days for just $19. Check it out starting with tonight. But going to that stuff, Nades, before we get to the perfect lineup, like this was just a prime example. Our stack rankings from yesterday, again, a lot of people were on Justin Fields, so we knew that one. Mason Taylor, only 4% owned. JSN, pretty much needed, right? You'll see him on every winning lineup. You could put him across from Magbuka. You had Ferguson. Dak crushed it. If you weren't on Daniel Jones stacks or Warren, who had a good game, you could play Jonathan Taylor, who we'll talk about in a second with the tools as well. So lots of different things you would see just in the top here to help you build a single entry. And then you're thinking about defense, play the Saints against Jackson Dart down at the bottom. Play the Indianapolis Colts versus Geno Smith down at the bottom. Like tons of different ways that you could fill it out just using the tools that we have here. But we'll go to the stone in a bit. I want to show that off. But let's get to the perfect lineup first. And it is 1 week, Nades, where the winner of the $20 Millie Maker had almost 250 points. And the optimal's 268 with the majority spend. Most people aren't getting to AJ Barner and Krosky Merritt, Bill. But just in general, it was a pretty chalk week, the way the pricing set up. You just had to build it out. I think the $20 Millie Maker really built a pretty interesting version of it and got to the top. So congrats to them. But what's your thoughts here on this winning lineup being Darnold, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Barner, with the run back in Egbuka? It kind of has like a pretty good setup to the lineup overall, even for an optimal.
Overall, I think, right, what do we know, or what did everyone think they know going into the slate yesterday, right? Well, the Dallas Jets game, can't miss game. We're going to see a lot of pieces from that game come into winning lineups, right? But if you weren't going to that game, right, you guys talked about it on Leverage Lane, looking for other game environments that have the potential to shoot out. Well, I mean, the Tampa Bay is down their entire team, basically, right? Mike Evans is out. All of these other wide receivers are out. Egbuka is still a #good, right? And wide receiver, cornerback matchups, this and that. People want to still try and make those work. This guy's good at football. Baker knows he's good at football. Baker's going to throw him the ball, right? And it also leverages the George Pickens for $300 more, things like that. So you could have got to a build like this and using our tools, right? Darnold was number 2 right behind Fields if you weren't going to that game, right? Going to another game environment that can pick up and pace and go back and forth. It was a close spread. It was good weather game and everything like that. And the other side had pieces where when we go to the Stone, you look at JSN's optimal rate. I mean, by far the best optimal rate on the slate for a wide receiver. And he wasn't 50% owned. He was in the 20s, right? So it's not like he's massive chalk. Everybody's playing this guy. 80% of the field is still not playing him, right? So how do you play him differently? Well, you add his quarterback who's sub 1% owned, right? And then leave out the JCM, right? And the AJ Barner. There's other plays that you could have got there. Like you could have put in Taylor, right, from the Jets as a 1Z position from the chalk game when you know Ferguson on the other side of that game is going to be the chalk there. So, and you still would have had a good run. But other than that, I mean, the lineup's really good. Jonathan Taylor, by far the best player on the slate. We'll show that again on the Stone too. And he actually came in half the ownership of guys like HN and that in a similar price tier up at the top. Could have paired him with the Colts defense to get off of the chalk Saints D's. But overall, I mean, pretty solid build, and we're going to see a lot of these plays show up in all the winning teams because most of them were owned. You needed basically 1 or 2 pivots yesterday, and that's like where Egbuka came in. Jamar Chase at 10% owned on a slate where you had a ton of salary when people wanted to play guys like Rico Dowdle and that when they were spending down at running back, Rico Dowdle, Rashad White, punting tight end, things like that. So overall, pretty solid build in general.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to pull it up here. Like you said, we'll be able to look at it in a second, but just going back, to this one for a second, it's like I said, the Jamar Chase thing. Shout out to my guy Alex, had that one on Leverage Lane. The Browning doubles were getting shit on until they weren't. He just needed to play more than half a quarter or 1 quarter when it kind of all came together for him. The first 3, not much there, but in general, you see this sometimes, but on a really heavy chalk week, this starts to make a ton more sense where you could just move a couple little pieces around, still have a pretty good score, but you didn't have much room to budge when the most popular defense, the best receiver, the best running back on this, the best value running back and all that. And people say, how do you say best? How do you know this? It's, that we always talk about this. We are not results oriented when it comes to this stuff. We always back it up. We talk about it. We just showed you our stack rankings. If JSM was as good as he was, why couldn't a 2%? I know our guy, Sean Sullivan, he was talking all week. That's going to be his lane that he's playing in. It didn't fully work out with Cup, but I'm saying you can get things from this to build around it. And I'll go to the Stone because this is where I think people still struggle. And we want people, especially our members, but if you're not a member, we want you to join and know that these tools are going to put you in the position to be able to have these outcomes. We've had back-to-back 100K winners in the last 2 weeks. We've had a ton of other wins beyond that across all sports. And the Stone is available on every sport we offer, all 8 major sports. This is a huge piece of how you get to work. Because someone says, well, I wasn't sure on Jonathan Taylor versus Achane. If only there was a place we could go and look and find out. Here's the thing. Achane, 24% to be optimal with our projections, our ownership, the slate at hand, our simulations, all of that. But pushing 30, and we knew he was steaming up in other places. By the way, Waddle right there and a much lower ownership was still a really solid optimal rate at the wide receiver position. Jonathan Taylor, almost 30% to be optimal. The best props at home, great matchup, 27 points. He ended up coming in, I think, at 23. We were off on the ownership slightly, but just to be clear, if he was not likely to get over 30. He was gonna, if anything, probably get steamed, probably moonwalk a little bit while other guys got steamed. That's where you could easily find the $700 on the slate and play JT over Achane if you were deciding it. Rico Dowdle at 4,300, almost a 13% optimal rate. Let's go down here. Where are we at? DeMercado and Carter, the best pivots, all this other stuff. Sure, if you're making a pivot and you're looking for a spot in your lineup, by all means, look for it. But a completely unknown situation in a different offense altogether, and they don't have those type of optimal rates. So again, you don't always need the best optimal rate. You can't just fill it out perfectly all the time, but you do need to consider these things and see them. The reason this made sense, look at JSN on here, Nate's 27.5%. Still leverage, almost 3 points leverage, even at if he was getting to 25%. I think he got to 22.7. So he actually ended up coming in just under this. Again, our ownership is pretty accurate, pretty close, but that was even more leverage if that was the case. And then you go combine it with the stack ranking is right on here, a 9.07, our second highest stack ranking on the slate. And you see that the quarterback is only 3% owned. This can outweigh this when you're putting them together, because if this actually ceilings out, then this is more likely to ceiling out. And what do you know? That was kind of how it happened. Even though the Millie Maker lineup didn't have, it had Justin Fields as opposed to him. And Justin Fields was 5,600 with 25.92. Sam Darnold was 5,100 with 31.64. So that's just another thing to see that we'll get to it there. And I can go on forever, but just to note, like Breece Hall, popped off the page. He's on that winning lineup. Jake Ferguson popped off the page. Those two made a mini stack. You go up to what we talked about earlier, Waddle. If you're not playing Achane because you went with somebody different and could afford him, like a Jonathan Taylor who was better, then you could put it across from Dowdle. And these are what ended up being on the winning lineup, Nate. So I know everyone uses the stone differently, but it really is right there if you take the time to dig in and see that.
Yeah, no, the stone is great. And yeah, the designations right up at the top, right? The pink, the purple, the teal, right, and the blue. Those are just for your eyes to have a starting place, right? Because there is so many colors. That's not the telltale end all be all, right? Because obviously there's no designation on the Dolphins and the Panthers game, but there is color coded on the actual players there. And then start looking at the ceilings. Okay, ceiling of Achane 34.6. Okay, ceiling of Jonathan Taylor 38.4. Well, you know they're going to eat into each other, just like the Bijan situation last week, right? From watching shows, hearing content around the industry, looking at cash plays, looking at the projected ownership, right, and the pricing and the way the build's setting up, right? Taking a step further and using a tool like this, crossing it over into SaberSim, and then putting plays. I mean, you can literally X out every player in SaberSim, enter in all of the players from the stone here that are showing good rates and color coded in that, run teams and kind of see what that looks like and get a sense of the slate that way as well. So, I mean, combining the tools that we have here, I mean, it's not following this core, it's not following this slate plan, it's not following this player pool, having a process built off of the tools that you can replicate day in and day out. I mean, every slate we have the stone here, right? So it's a repeatable process, going through the stone, looking through it, and then crossing it over to Saber. It's not saying Saber gave me this, and why was I on this? Or why is Saber giving me so much Achane? Well, looking at this, how can I tweak that a little bit different to get a different roster construction if I'm not on him, right? Well, Jalen Waddle, 15% optimal rate for a wide receiver at a 3. I mean, at a position, right, where wide receiver was pretty scarce yesterday. Why not take a shot on that? Run it leverages the build completely. So yeah, I mean, not much more to say about this tool. Obviously our members know, but if you're not a member yet, there's still time to get in now. And this is for every sport. I know NHL's coming back here this week. Tomorrow we have a stone like this for available. College football is another one, right? There's 1 million players for college football. The team has this available, and it'll give you a starting point if college football is available.
Yeah, I love what you said too about if you just turned everybody off in SaberSim, just took these plays and started filling them in, and then let Saber do the job of finding you the leverage and building in the leverage based on the style of tournament you're in and all that. But so many people are trying to like come up with random stuff or bake in different things that are already baked into the projections and put their own spin on it. It's like I always say with chess, the pieces are the pieces. It's just some people know how to play them better. But the point is you can't like make your piece worth more. You start with the same game, the same board, the same pieces, and then it's whoever puts them together better or plays better. That's the case here as well. Can you do me a favor? So the $20 Millie Maker lineup, let's read it off for a second, just in pairs. Like I know for sure I talked with Mayo and Squirrel Patrol on Friday about this, and I said, most people with Fields lineups will be looking to exclude Breece Hall and play Wilson. And for good reason. I'm going to use the stone for this exercise, but I said you could play Fields and Breece Hall as a block, the most optimal quarterback, one of the most optimal in the 5K range, at least, and up there in general, 22.5. And then Ferguson, one of the most optimal here. And I know people get caught up on like, but he's negative leverage. It's so close, and it's also 20%. What other tight end do you have at 20% almost? 19.5%. Let's see. You got McBride, who costs $1,000 more. And you've got, where is our guy from Indy? Warren is the other one. But Warren was definitely even higher. So when you're thinking about the game stack and how you're putting it together, plus if you were playing Jonathan Taylor, who I'm for sure playing in this spot, I'm not necessarily going there together. But let's just go with the lineup. So it's Fields, Hall, just to show off these upgrades, and all in green too, Nades, all listed as cash consideration. That's how good of plays these are, that you could literally play them in cash. So those three for sure, the obvious ones. What's the next one? There's a secondary stack.
Egbuka, JSN.
Okay. JSN, right there. Egbuka, right there. Right? Same type of thing. So again, 9.8, not the highest, but if you were looking for a secondary stack and then one that would have at least a little bit in there, in blue, if you go up to the top in the blue, high upside. Well, we saw that yesterday, and it felt like it could have been even more, but he had a killer game, so he fits in there. What's the next secondary stack?
Rico Dowdle, Jalen Waddle.
Already talked about that one, but Rico Dowdle, right up there, cash consideration, and boom, a second high upside, which is more like a leverage. It's just saying, look, he's not going to be 25% or 30% or whatever that might be. If you look in that lineup, Waddle was 12.8%. We had him at 12.9, off by 0.1. So again, ownership matters. And then it had Jonathan Taylor, correct?
Yep, Taylor and safety.
Running back and cash consideration. And I don't think we color code the Ds. That's one thing to note. But just the obvious, it sucks that like the chalk D smashed. I know it hurt us in some places. I don't typically play as much of a chalk D, but just of note, they were the most optimal on the slate. So just to put it all together and all the pieces, it was all right there. If you literally just put the stone up on one screen, put SaberSim or what other optimizer you have, but Saber does the best job of giving you, even with the core plan, of giving you Saber score and factoring in the field size and the levers you would need to pull, you could literally just exclude all your players, fill in all the optimals and the color codeds, and then let it put lineups together for you. And I guarantee you'd be in a better position than if you didn't do that. So to each their own, do what you want to do with it. I'm just noting it. You can use this for showdown. You can use it for whatever you want to use it for, but that's just to show you the $20 Millie Maker lineup was right there. Did you have any other thoughts, Nades, on that $20 Millie Maker lineup? I know in the end it was a pretty chalky build, but when you think about how the pieces got put together, Fields, Hall, Ferguson, a different way to play it. No Pickens, no Wilson. You see that. Egbuka and JSN, two upside guys where you might not need their quarterbacks. In this case, JSN could have worked with Darnold and did. Darnold had 31.64, but then JT, Dowdle with Waddle, Saints. I mean, just a really nice lineup overall that got to the top.
Yeah, the thing that, the ownership is up there, but people are like, oh, he played all the chalk. Yeah, but he didn't. The ownership, not all ownership is equal, right? The ownership that you're seeing here is obviously across a field size of 192. What is the Millie Maker? 180,000, 190,000 entrants, right? That ownership is going across the entire portfolio, right? So when you're taking the ownership, there's a lot of bad lineups, right? You talk about this all the time, right? That ownership isn't not all ownership is equal, right? We're realizing that there's one or two pivot spots a lot of times in a chalk smash type week. That is the difference from getting to the top to min cashing, right? And it's not pulling this lever, that lever, this level, right? You only really need to pull one or two levers if the rest of your build makes sense in a way that you're playing the chalk in the games like you talked about, right? Like the Waddle, right? Situations like that and overall roster construction. And then another point too is the stone. Like I talked about, you could literally just put all the highlighted guys in the stone into SaberSim, leave all the quarterbacks in just because, right? The quarterbacks, don't worry about touching the quarterbacks in the stone. If you wanted to, you could, but leave all the quarterbacks and just fill in the skill position players with the highlighted guys and let Saber decide on what quarterbacks it's going to pull based on your pool. It's naturally going to pull in the guys that are attached to the players that have color coded. And that's how you build a player pool, right? I know there's hundreds of players on a Sunday main slate. And if you just stick to these color coded, I mean, I don't think there's one guy that is missed in any winning lineup that's doesn't have a color coordinated designation on the stone here. And that's how you kind of start. And then you can make your tweaks and go further from there. So I didn't want to call that out.
Yeah, and for T Trizzle here, it says, so the Sabre starter package doesn't give you the same as core. It gives you more. The difference is if you go to SaberSim.com, we're partners with them, but it's very clear. If you go to SaberSim.com and just use SaberSim, you don't get all of the Ship It Nation content, the Stone, the Discord, Ship It games, et cetera, but they only offer starter and ultimate. Starter is better than core. Sabre was amazing and said, you know what, you guys, we want you to have this plan. We want you to be able to give some of your grandfathered members a different plan, or people that want to get in and just try it out, an option. We're going to create core. And core is simple. It's 150 lineups with late swap. And so you can get, you don't get portfolio diversification. You don't get contest flashback. You don't get the additional projections and ownership from Sabre, which is also including other sports that we don't cover. So as you see on the screen, when you go to the starter plan, and it's $139 a month, but you can get your first month for $97, the exact same price to try out SaberSim.com. You can go to ShipItNation.com, go to Join the Nation. It's in partnership with them, in conjunction with the partnership, to get your first month for the same price, to see what Ship It Nation offers and be able to use all these tools. You get the 500 total lineups. You still get the late swap. You get portfolio diversification. You get the extra projection sets for the, the AM only, the PM only, the showdown slates that aren't featured, all of that. And then you also get contest flashbacks, so you can look into things a little bit further. And then obviously the ultimate is if you want the contest sims. But this is a key factor. And our guy Newlands, who's coming on here in a couple of weeks, said starter is great. I just switched to ultimate, but starter is what most people need. Ultimate should wait until you're putting up enough money to make the investment logical. Everyone's situation is different. And I agree. I can't say this enough. I think you got to be playing, like, for me, it's a concept of, like, I don't know, 4,000 a month. Let's say 1,000 a week or something. If you're playing that kind of money in multiple slates and multiple sports and all that, then I think treat DFS like a business. The cost of $300 a month, give or take, to get the ultimate plan is not going to hurt you in the sense of putting in $4,000 to $5,000 a month. It might actually put you in a much better position. And that's where Newlands is at now. Going away from this for a second, get back to it, Nades, and we'll pull up more in a second. But Rashid Shaheed, they talked about just being a week early on him. That one hurt too. We had him with James Cook, who's another story, by the way, but we had him with James Cook last week. Shaheed came out and had himself a really big week this week. Again, a high upside guy, and most certainly came through. Again, with those color codes, you would find him in the pool. He would be there.
I just went through another exercise too, the color-coded quarterbacks too, to take it even a step further. I was talking about the player pool. CJ Stroud, color-coded on the stone, high upside. He's one of the top 5 scoring quarterbacks on the entire slate in general. Dak Prescott, color-coded. Justin Fields, color-coded. All in the top 5 in general. Yeah, we didn't have Sam Darnold, who's the highest, but guess what? We had Baker Mayfield on the other side, also a top 5 scorer on the slate in general, right? So you could, if you really wanted to, try it out in a 20 max or an MME set and really leverage the stone. Take the color coordinated designations after, right? The editor and team tags the channel that, hey, stone and projections are final for Sunday main slate about an hour and a half before lock. Put these eyes all in, put it into SaberSim, run teams, run builds, take a look at what those kind of builds are looking like, and then you can extrapolate it out. Okay, the tool itself is combining these guys with this guy, right? So if you kind of section it down into a single entry build or something like that, right? You can kind of see the combinations of good plays that have data and metrics behind them, that you're not just pulling or listening to this guy. He told me to play him. This guy told me to play him, right? The whole information overload, right? Listening to all the shows around the industry. That is all baked into the tool behind the scenes, and a lot of work goes into putting this zone out every single week. So I can't stress that enough. If you just do that, just try it and start building a process that way and see how it works. Give it a week, give it 2 weeks, right? Take a look at it, tweak it from there as a foundation, right? You can't build a house without a foundation.
Yeah, that's what I can't recommend enough, right? You got to just use it as your foundation, use it as a starting point, especially for those that aren't finding success or even finding themselves get close. It's a way to get yourself a lot closer and take some of the guesswork out of it, right? We talk about that a ton. I did send the link to Go Collect, so we'll talk to him here in just a minute. I was just trying to see one more thing. I wanted to check it out for, it's already been updated, I think. Yeah, it was updated from yesterday already. But yeah, last night was the same thing. I mean, a lot of people in the chat were talking about the Discord. We're chatting about how did people get to Curtis Samuel, and he was the second best points per dollar in the projections at Ship It Nation. And then we also had Ray Davis, who didn't actually do anything or get there, but people were worried about him coming out. And if he had got in on either of those tries he got, it could have been a lot better for him at just that $400 price tag also. But yeah, the Samuel play was pretty much needed. So there's that. We'll wait. Go Collect should be here with us just a moment. We'll get him in and then be able to go from there on the next steps. Just give us 1 second. Tuesday. Okay, there he is. Give him a second to get settled. I'm also going to pull up, where was it at here? I think I just had it. So I'm going to pull this up. This is his lineup from single entry this week, and we'll bring him in. Kyle, what's going on, man? Do you got us?
Yeah, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, man. Thank you so much for doing this. We appreciate you. And I know, we had the pleasure of meeting before and hanging out a little bit, the casino and whatnot at some of these events and stuff, but excited for you to hop on here and do this, man. We've had a fun time these last couple of weeks with everybody jumping in and sort of sharing some of their process, some of their thoughts, what they're learning as they go along, and wanted to sort of do the same with you, man. So you're a member at both Ship It Nation and the Mastermind Project. Maybe just start off, talk a little bit about that, what got you into everything, and sort of your thoughts on everything before we get to your actual lineup review.
All right. Yeah. So, going way back to other sites, I first started following you in your content. Your approach to content is like something that I'd never seen beforehand, and just wanting other people to learn along the way, in addition to hopefully getting a bank here and there. That's what makes it sustainable. Learning how to use bankroll management and learning how to leverage and roster construction, all sorts of different things that you touch upon on Mastermind, as well as Ship It Nation education courses. So just soaking up all that information, trying to apply it every slate and find different levers to pull and try to figure out the puzzle.
Yeah, man, we love that puzzle, and that's why in the Mastermind logo, even threw that in there with the brain, the light bulb, and all that. But it's what you said. It's a continuous journey. We're all working on it. We're all trying to get better. We're all trying to find our way to the top of these tournaments, and it's a lot more fun when you can do it with the community, and that's what we've got at Ship It Nation. So it brings everything together, puts everybody on the same page. We all are working towards the same common goal, and it's nice because then, like last night, shout out to our guy Hebrew Cheetah Rio. He didn't quite pull it off. Somebody got a solo shipper again last night. The fun in Showdown this season is how many solo shippers there's been, but still second place for 40K and just cheering other people on along the way. Eden Cohen, Sweet Boy, 100K yesterday, Jaywalk, and 100K last week. It can be any of us at any time, right? So I think that's kind of what you're hinting at, is just part of the journey is that, and then being able to be there to support each other.
Yep, absolutely. And just also being able to help out others too, who maybe have entered this little niche world that we operate in, and trying to help them along the way too, with things that I've learned from people who have taught me along the way as well.
Yeah, love that call, man. So let's hop into it. Nades, I'll let you sort of run through it. We got the single entry lineup here Kyle put together. What's your first thoughts, Nades? You can run through it and see what you see, and then we'll talk about it. But I think it's a pretty nice build actually on paper, and it's just, again, one that didn't fully come through, but certainly something that I liked, especially in single entry yesterday.
Yeah, well, great build. I had the exact same build as my main team yesterday, the exact same setup there. So I can talk through it probably very similar to how you thought through it. I mean, we landed on the exact same build there. I knew a way to play, right? Shout out to Leverage Lane, shout out to that show, shout out to you, Tambo. And you can use the stone for that too as well, right? To see kind of the lane. I'm sure that's where you're obviously pulling that from, right? I'm trying to understand these games differently, how to relate it back to the tools, right? Instead of just kind of guessing. The Dak Prescott way was way to play that game differently. And guess what? Dak Prescott is still all the shit people want to talk about him. He still throws the ball a ton. He's still good for fantasy quarter. He's still a good fantasy quarterback, right? And they're down CeeDee Lamb, they're down weapons, right? So it's more condensed offense there. People were trying to guess and make Tolbert and all of this stuff work. Well, guess what? You need Flournoy, not Tolbert, things like that. So going in on that game differently, setting it up, right? I always double stack Dak, Pickens, Ferguson, because I knew Ferguson was going to get held in check because of McBride and Tyler Warren. Very similar to probably what Go Collect was seeing as well. I didn't want to run it back with the most popular wide receiver on the slate and Garrett Wilson. Leveraged that a little bit with Breece Hall, who is very good, optimal rate, everything there. There was no way I wasn't playing Jonathan Taylor, which we already talked about there. Using the stone, you look at him. I mean, it's bright green as it can get on the stone. It just jumps off the page. I knew his ownership was also going to get held in check because of guys like HN and the cheap running backs, right? You can only play at max 3 running backs in a build, so not everybody can be 40% owned. Somebody has to moonwalk while other guys are steaming up. So I like that. And then the secondary stack, I knew it was pretty chalky, but for like a single entry type build, the Rashad White and JSN, right? Another one, JSN flew off the page in optimal rate. I'm sure you saw that Go Collect on the stone as well. And one, I was leveraging Tyler Warren at the tight end position, right? Like you were here with the Ferguson, you already knew that. Well, in that exact same game as a secondary correlation to a Jonathan Taylor, you're not playing Jacoby Myers, who was the chalk. You're playing Trey Tucker at the exact same salary as a Tyler Warren. And you're saying if Tyler Warren's not getting there, maybe it's because Jonathan Taylor is eating the end zone and eating all of those touchdowns, which it definitely was, which in turn makes the Las Vegas offense have to throw, and you're not using the chalk piece in that build. You're using a Trey Tucker. So it's still it's a different position, but as a onesie position, I like the point that Alex made on the Saturday show, right? You got to look at all of these guys as a flex because you can play them all in the flex. So technically at a onesie position, you could play 2 tight ends, right? You can play 3-4 wide receivers. So when you're looking at that, it is a 1v1 swap, in my opinion, as $4,700 Tyler Warren, you're leveraging with Taylor, going to a Trey Tucker on the other side at the same exact price point in a similar type roster setup from a construction standpoint. So overall, I think the build is really good. Just didn't get all the way to the top, and you were put in a position to do so.
Yeah, talk about it a little bit, Kyle. It's your build too. So just maybe break down, but I see what you did with obviously the stacking, the Jonathan Taylor play, and then it's, some secondary stack with him with Tucker, White with JSN. Sort of break it down for us, what you were seeing when you were putting it together.
Yeah, sure. So like Nate's hinted at, I was looking at the stone to optimal rates. That's one of the big things that I look at for single entry, because if I'm going to be investing salary into ownership, I want to make sure that it's going to give me it has the highest chance of getting to optimal. And, that's where I got JSN, and I wanted to bring back something from that game because I had a feeling that the Buccaneers were going to compete in that game with all the injuries with Evans and Irving. I thought that they were going to be a more concentrated offense against Seattle. So Rush, and then White was just somebody who I threw in. He was obviously looking good. I was debating between Rashad White and Rico Dowdle. So I was kind of, I'm not going to be results oriented here, but yeah, that was my biggest conundrum when I was finishing out that lineup, because I had the double stack with Dak with Breece Hall. That game was obviously looking like it was just going to go off with those defenses, and it was just a matter of trying to find the right pieces that hit. And I thought that I was hoping to get more from Pickens, but it didn't work out that way. So. And then Trey Tucker, he was a low-owned separator that I got as a run back from Jonathan Taylor. Taylor looked like the best play on the slate with that optimal rate. And so I couldn't get up to the Colts defense for this lineup, so I wanted to get a run back from that offense, since the Raiders had about a 20-point total, I believe. And so yeah, and then the Panthers defense, I figured if I'm playing the lineup the way I was, and I didn't have any A-chain, that I wanted to leverage that by playing the Panthers defense and try to gain a little bit more separation from the field, since I had a lot of ownership invested in JSN and Taylor and Hall. Hall was just underpriced this week. He was just way too cheap for the workload he was going to be getting with no Braylon Allen. So, yeah.
Love
overall.
to mention on the Carolina stuff too. Like that's another thing I always talk about when people again, it didn't work out. That's why it's the best. People what do you mean it's the best? It sucks. It's like, no, yeah, you wanted more points, but it was part of the process and it's not results oriented to say that when you're not on HN, you're not on Waddle, you're not going to that game or doing anything with it. If you land on the Carolina D, that's just fine. It's also the way like you said, it could have easily worked out where you end up going with Rashad White down to Dowdle for $400, but then it kind of puts you in a spot where you might not really know what to spend it on, because I was looking at it and Trey Tucker plus $400 doesn't really put you in the position of much. Maybe you land on Jamison Williams and leave a couple $100. That was certainly possible if you like that more, but I like the build, the way you set it up. And Tucker was a really strong point of leverage there with no Brock Bowers. Meyer was already ruled out earlier in the week for them. And then you had people there was late steam moving to Jacoby Myers, and he hurt a lot of people that ended up landing on him there. You probably weren't likely to go with Waddle based off of that. I guess that would have been the other way that you see this, is if you could have if you went away from the JSN with White, it could have been, and Tucker with Taylor, it could have been Waddle and then drop down, but then you probably end up, it might just fit. What would it be? The Saints D? I wonder if that fits. You would have got 300. So what is it? 47 to 54. It would have been damn close for you to go to Tucker, Dowdle, and the Saints D from Tucker, White, and Panthers. It looks like it could have been Saints, Dowdle, and Waddle, maybe. But that would have been a secondary with Waddle and Dowdle, and then you get on the Saints D. It would have been a really good setup even further. But still, it's again, that's everybody always says that. If I could have done this, if I had done that, I would have been here. That's always easy to say after the fact. The build was sound. It looks good in everything that you set up. What else did you play yesterday, Kyle? This was your single entry, it seems. Did you play some other stuff too, 20 max or anything else like that?
Yeah, I did the mini max to 150. Not a very good week, but I needed more of the chalk that went off. I wasn't overweight enough on the Dowdles and the other pieces. That I wanted more Ibuka, but I didn't have it in the right places. So I only had a few lineups crack the top 1,000, and overall I got half the entries back. And then 3 max, I got 1 of 3 that cashed. But that was really all I played this week, was just single entry, 3 max, and then 150.
Yeah, one of my biggest takeaways, I guess, Nades, and I'll bring you in here, with everything that Kyle just said, is the other thing I think a lot of people think about is even if they only have 20 lineups or less, they still don't love to get to a Sam Darnold, even though they know that if JSN equals this, now JSN at 7,100, by the way, doesn't need Sam Darnold to go off. But we saw it with, like we said, and same as Puka the week before at 39, he doesn't necessarily always need Stafford, but there is the topic and the conversation of what if. And the other thing too is Barner got 2 touchdowns yesterday. If even one of those goes to Cooper Kupp, again, a bunch of ifs, but my point being a lot more people had Darnold with JSN with Kupp. That reminds me a lot of the week before with Stafford, Puka, and Adams. It's it may not go that way often, but when it does, it can equal a lot better. And I know the people that use the tools at Shipping Nation and saw this stuff were fine with Sam Darnold, but I'm saying when you're seeing a guy like JSN pop off the page like that, when you're seeing a Puka Nacua pop off the page like the previous week, you do have to be thinking about what those stacks look like. Even if they feel a little bit uncomfortable, the uncomfortable piece is what leaves a guy like Sam Darnold at 2%, right? It's people just don't feel, I'll just play JSN and get there. And the $20 Millie Maker did get away with that. But just to note it, is that's kind of another thought process piece where even in a smaller amount of lineups or even in a single entry, you can still get there with that because it allows you to fill out with kind of everything else that you could possibly want and just be unique.
Yeah. The other thing too is, Fields was 5,600. You knew everybody was playing him. This is not result oriented. Obviously, Fields had a great day, tons of winning lineups in that. But in a similar type roster construction build, who else is a quarterback that could match or come close to the ceiling, right? Going back to the stone, you look at Sam Darnold, 5,100. His ceiling is 27.7. Fields' ceiling is 30, right? So he's within 3 points of Fields' ceiling, $500 cheaper, and 1/30th the ownership. Darnold was 1%, Fields was 30%, right? So how you can use the tools and going back, and then you look at the common build type, right? Justin Fields, Garrett Wilson, George Pickens was $18,300. Well, going to Sam Darnold, JSN, to stick to the optimal rates on the stone, Agbuka was 19-1. It's an $800 difference. That's a difference from going to one of those 5K running backs, dropping down to like a Rico Dowdle as your value play, or a Rashad White in that same game, something like that, right? You can find money that way. So it's not like it's a $4,000 swap, right? So I like looking at things like that as well. And what's the common build? How can I build it differently or in the same salary type range that has a similar type ceiling? So if this, then that type of thing.
Yeah, and just so many ways to get different within the build. That's the other thing. And another note too, like the one thing that I'll say about the Darnold thing is, yes, the stack rankings show 2 spots with it and so on and so forth. But you can also sometimes just get away with just cutting it off. Like yesterday, use a prime example. Our guy Metro Boom nailed it. It was so much value last week. He's talking about yesterday that at every position that I couldn't make up my mind. Well, when you go Darnold, JSN, Agbuka, and just stop, you can get away with it that way too. And then you could just fill in Jonathan Taylor, Breece Hall, Dowdle, whatever you kind of want to put in after that point and still get a pretty damn good score without going wild and putting in the Cups, the Barners, and hoping to get lucky on that. Go ahead, Kyle. You got something there you're thinking?
Yeah, I was just going to add in because a great show that, the Leverage Lane show that you and Alex do. I think this one and that one is probably my 2 favorite shows to take in every week now. But just something that you and Alex talked about this week's show was separators, right? We're talking like separators and leveraging ownership. Yeah. A great way, like you and Nades were just talking about, was with JSN. If he's going to be 25% owned, throw his quarterback in 2%. Easy separator. And then obviously you're leveraging the field because if this guy goes off, it's like the Jamar Chase effect, the AJ Brown, the Hurts effect. Like the quarterback's going to come with them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I talked about it forever. I used to use the Burrow Chase example a ton when people get so pissed off that Burrow gets there at ownership. I mean, Chase gets there at ownership and has 39 points. And then they're mad that everybody got there. It's like, well, only 2% of the field had Joe Burrow, who had 3 of those touchdowns that he threw, plus he threw another one to a backup tight end or something. It's like you could have just had Burrow, Chase, a run back, or nothing else and called it a day, and that's exactly it. So you nailed that. I think you had enough separation in this lineup. I know it just didn't work out, but it was built sound. But when you've got a 6% Dak, a 3% Trey Tucker, and a 2% defense against and that's the other thing too, is this is a good point you just brought up, and I want to add this in. So enough levers were pulled, in my opinion, but also not all levers are the same, right? And so here's an example. It's easy. It's like my showdown example all the time. So I said, I have 150 unique lineups. I'm like, oh, really? Let me look at your portfolio. Oh, they capped everything at 40K. Well, yes, when you leave $10,000 on the table in every single lineup in showdown, you're very likely to have a bunch of uniques. It doesn't, again, who knows? We've had a bunch of solo shippers, 42K, 44K. That's fine anyway to leave money. I'm just saying doing it in all of your lineups, of course, that's a way. When you just play a random defense on a slate that's going to be 1% owned, fine, and that would be a separator for you, but it may just be 1% for a reason. In your case, you're finding separators that are also leveraging other positions on the slate. Your key point here in the Panthers, 2%, but they're going up against Tua, who is now down. Tyreek has not looked that good, and Achane is going to be off the page with ownership. It's a prime example of how you can do it. Trey Tucker, they're down. Meyer, they're down. Bowers now. Jacoby Myers is steaming up. It's not the best matchup or whatnot for Genty, even though he looked great again. It's things like that. You're like, okay, well, I'll just take a 3% Tucker. He let some people down last week. Didn't have a full-on great game, but he did still make sense on the slate. And then Dak cuts into the Ferguson, cuts into the Pickens. I also saw plenty of lineups, by the way, that just did Dak, Ferguson, Hall, and then filled it out, and they weren't going for that full ceiling. I also saw lineups, myself included, that tried to add Tolbert in there, and it wasn't the worst idea. It just happened to be a Ryan Flournoy game where he gets there instead. So, again, all this stuff made sense with Turpin out and with no Lamb and all that, but finding levers that actually make sense to pull are the best case scenario when you can get the low own separator piece with leverage on top of the fact that it actually makes sense on the slate as a whole, not just finding 1% owned plays for no reason. Right on. Anything you want to add with that? And then we'll go back to Kyle here on a couple other things, and then we'll wrap up.
Yeah, no, not only that, too, it's also, you knew everybody was playing the Saints D, right? So in those lineups where you could have fit the Saints D, right? Well, if the Saints D doesn't get there and it's the Panthers and it's because of Achane, right? Now you know the Achane Saints D lineups, you're double leveraging and you're double jumping that separator, right? Going up to a Panthers for $300 more. It's not flipping the build completely. It's still in the same kind of tier of a build for the salary. So that's an additional take too. So I'm glad he hit on it because I did miss that.
And another thing too, and again, this didn't work out at all. The Saints obviously got there and whatnot, and I get all that, but like the main premise of the Saints was it might be their only chance all season. They're at home. It is Jackson Dart, who, mind you, he doesn't really throw the ball a ton anyway, but like obviously anything can happen. And it did turn out that when he decided to start throwing the ball, there was picks to be had. So I get that. But just on the concept of 2,200 versus what was Carolina again? 2,500, I think.
Yeah, $300 difference.
It's also against Jackson Dart, who might not be that good or might be really good. He actually looked fine until he didn't. But just of note, they're down neighbors. It's what's the difference in the Panthers side, but it's not like anybody on the Giants was super high owned this week. Like Scat wasn't getting ownership. Dart wasn't getting ownership. Wandale, Slayton, Theo, none of those guys were getting ownership. So that was a way to actually leverage the Saints at that. And it looked good until it didn't. When Theo Johnson had 2 touchdowns, it was like, oh shit, this could be a Dart Theo day. But the other side of that is the Panthers were 2% versus like 18%. And it's at home against Tua, who does throw the ball and sometimes doesn't look very good, who's down a top receiver in Tyreek, like the Giants are down neighbors. Like the scenario is not that much different, but the ownership is, 10x almost in the other spot. It just happened to work out this time. But that's, again, going back to it, Kyle, where I love what you did there, man. Like it's, again, not about the result. Always you need the result to get the outcome. But in the sense of how you built this, I think it's just more than fine, honestly.
And I don't think I'll ever play a 15% owned defense on a main slate because it's just there's so much variance involved. I mean, it would have to be overwhelming to click on.
Yeah, it's not typical that it comes through. I will note, like this is what I said yesterday too, is like, again, at least this was the spot if you were going to do it. The optimal was up there for this defense. There really wasn't much going on the Giants side outside of this is more like the art versus science. Like Nate said, you wouldn't even have got to this. And in the end, you didn't need it anyway. But if you were wanting to leverage this and go against that 16% defense, one of the ways to do it was like Dart, Slayton, and Shaheed. I talked about that on the show. It's like, if you really want to hope this game busts wide open, that is a way, because if Shaheed gets a big bomb, he did, 87-yarder, and Slayton gets a big bomb, he did, except he decided not to catch his, then that would be a case where you could see the game go back and forth and really set up. Like if Slayton catches that bomb, it is actually a whole different slate, because again, it would have been another one for Dart, another one for Slayton. It would have changed out some of the defense stuff. Theo already had 2, Shaheed on the other side. That's a pretty good 4-man stack with low to no ownership. That is way more art than science. Like that would have been, you would have kind of had to get there on your own, then trust the stone or something like that. But that's why we trust the stone, because in the end, it wasn't ended up needed. If you got Shaheed in there, by all means, a great option to get there. But that's why we had those tagged as the high upside options. There was a play and there was a reason that you could get to that stuff, right? With Theo, with Dart, with Slayton, with Shaheed on the other side. That was just a way to get a really cheap 4-man stack, almost in the way Sheets did it a couple weeks ago, where it's like, look, we know Geno with 3 receivers is not likely to get there very often. But if they do, the rest of the bets in the lineup, if you will compare the lineup to a parlay, we're all set up really strong across the board. With this cheap of a stack, you could fit everything in. You could fit Jonathan Taylor, you could fit Breece Hall, you could fit whoever else you wanted. Like you could get away with pretty much whatever. I don't know. Kyle, any other thoughts from you before we keep it moving?
Let's have a good fun Monday Night Football slate and end the week on a high note.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it. Also, too, just talk a little bit about the Mastermind project. I know that's part of this setup as well. We've got most people are Ship It Nation members, are Mastermind members if they're in the program. But the project over at Mastermind has been, I think amazing for a lot of different reasons. A lot of people are seeing value in it in just bringing that up. But you can talk a little bit more about it, being that you're in it for yourself.
Yeah, as soon as I was signed up, like the very first week that it started up, and then I just started looking at all the videos that were educational videos that were posted on there, mind map and behind the minds, and just taking in information and trying to process it so that I can apply it to my own DFS play and try to improve and try to put myself in a position to be successful long term and be sustainable.
What do you think has been the most valuable for you? This is a list of everything that's included. Obviously, I think the common thing is like some people see that there's a lot of videos in there. I would have to take forever to catch up. But the point is it's all segmented out so you can kind of take in exactly what you want to take in. It's at your own pace. You don't pay a monthly fee or anything like that. It's a one-time join. You're in. What's sort of been the most valuable to you when it comes to that?
Really enjoy. I mean, for the beginners, I would recommend the mind map just to like start it off, just to get like a basic understanding of DFS and what goes into the thought process behind it before you start making, investments into lineups and such. But also the roundtables. I love the discussions that we have about, what's coming up next. What are we doing next? And then, also bouncing ideas off of other members of Mastermind. There's some sharp people in there, so it's not just Tambo preaching from his little podium and telling everybody like how it's done. We're all in there throwing ideas and bouncing it off of one another, and some things you never think of before too. And then obviously like the behind the minds is really cool too, because you get a sneak peek into like some of what the top players are thinking and how they're approaching it, and what they're doing, things of that nature. So that's a nice layer to it as well.
Yeah, man, Hamhawk, who helps us with college football, just won another 40K on the weekend. Most recent interview was with him. Our guy Shaloub, that was the 250K he won in baseball. He talks about his background and story and history. Lots of different ones. Belman is a really good one. He was up there with Rio last night. They had the same lineup, tied for second in the NFL Showdown streets. But a lot of those things are there. I think that's just the key thing to remember. So if you guys want to check it out, it's shipitnation.com/math. You can check it out there, and then you can go down and see what's included. It shows you everything that you need to get started. If I go back here to the main page, you can see it when you scroll down. You can just click I'm ready to join. It's a complete one-time payment, or you can do 3 split equal payments if you want to get in for less than $100 and have access starting right away. And you said it, you get the 3.5-hour top 10 course right away, which is some of the more basic stuff. Benefits of an optimizer, how to create a player pool from scratch, live final and satellites. This has been huge for people. 1-3 max versus MME, a lot of stuff that people struggle with. But then there's a little bit more advanced course, another 3.5 hours that you can get through. It's a one Saturday, and you could take these 2 courses, or one weekday, whatever you want to say. This goes a little bit more in depth. Roster construction, GPP leverage. If you're using the Sims explained, lineup selection, not just contest selection, late swap, review process, single entry, showdown, and then a full rapid fire of all the lessons learned and questions and answers that I've got from bringing this project to life. So this is the best way to do it, guys. You can get in. If you have any questions, hit me up, but you can get in for less than $100 immediately and start today and work on your game. Nades, anything you want to add before we get out of here, man?
Yeah, no, overall, not much more to add. The Mastermind course, even myself, I've been playing DFS for 15 years, right? And I still learn something every day in there. I still watch the videos over again and try and pick up different pieces from listening to other top players, yourself. And the better thing is too, right, when you put like-minded individuals together and create a community where everybody feels like family. It's a closed door, right? Everybody's free to speak up and speak their mind and speak what they're thinking. And whether it's astronomical off the board that you think, well, somebody else might pull something from that, and we all talk through it and learn from each other. So overall, really, really good. The private Discord is great too. You can throw anything in there. I know we had a bunch of people in our latest Q&A talking about how to use an optimizer and set different rules for, say, a value play, right? And I dropped a nugget in there saying a lot of these value plays that I like to tie them to either the quarterback within the game environment, right? So if you're boosting the projection, it doesn't kind of hurt the rest of your portfolio where you get a bunch of this guy tied to other game environments, right? Where there could be other value plays to pull from there. So little things like that, it's great overall.
And yeah. One more thing, just to chime in before we sign off. In Mastermind, another great feature that I enjoy, that I utilize a lot, is the podcast format that was actually suggested by a member when we were in one of our roundtable sessions, and just being able, because I'm not the type of guy to really listen to the radio in the car anymore when I'm driving to work. I'm listening to the content. I'm listening to podcasts. So that's a great way to utilize that as well.
Yeah, the community controlled content is the point. That's a lot of the courses. That's the thing are literally what members and people said, we want more of this. We don't see any of this around the industry. A lot of people will spend a lot of time on YouTube and on ChatGPT and on, Googling it and whatever, trying to find all this information and put it together. It would take forever. It is literally all in one place here. There's nothing else like it that exists. I call it the Netflix of DFS because you can sort of just go through it. But the key is putting it all together. You can go to shipitnation.com. Use code SHIP19, get 5 days, see the tools. We went through them in depth today on the show to show you how you can build Millie Maker winning lineups with the stone, with the stack rankings. That's where I would always get started. And then if you're watching this and you're ready to take your game to the next level and you're learning stuff on Leverage Lane and the shows that we do, Hoop, Title, and myself back today with Showdown for Jacksonville and Kansas City, when you have that type of stuff and you want to take it to the next level, so many people are spending $100 to buy into another tournament, or $100 on the next slate, $100 on the next slate, and they're never actually working on trying to get better. They're just taking another shot at another tournament, hoping it goes their way. You got to put in the work. Everybody else out there that's putting in the work, that's the most successful players. That's what you're seeing, people that are making it their own. So check it out. Go to shipitnation.com. Use SHIP19. It's $19. It gets you in, gets you all access. If you want to get on our free email list, you can do so. That has process, strategy, tutorials, the DFS blueprint guide, the 59-page DFS PDF guide comes in. We do giveaways, promos, TNN, the nation news, baby. Forget CNN and politics, TNN and DFS. Let's go. So, all right, that's going to do it for this one, guys. We appreciate you watching. Kyle, thanks again, man, so much for coming on. I know people love this stuff. Hopefully this will be helpful to others, and then maybe we see them on here in the future. For my man Kyle jumping in, for my guy Nades, for myself, ToeTagginTambo, let's ship it.